Kody Brown, once defined by the boundaries of a polygamous marriage that spanned over 2 decades, has now become the living symbol of freedom, strength, and self-respect. Her journey from the quiet corners of emotional confinement to the open embrace of self-ownership is nothing short of revolutionary. When Kody recently revealed that she never talks about Kody Brown in her real life, except when filming, it was not just a statement of detachment. It was an act of profound empowerment. That single word, never, spoken with calm assurance, echoed like the final bell marking the end of an era. For years, she had lived under the weight of expectations, of sharing a husband, a home, and even her emotions with other women, all while maintaining a public image of unity and faith. But today she stands as a woman who reclaimed her narrative, who transformed her pain into purpose, and whose silence about Kody is, paradoxically, the loudest statement of independence she could ever make. To truly understand the gravity of this transformation, we must step back and examine the environment that Kody emerged from. Her life in the Brown household was governed by a system of control disguised as faith. In the name of spiritual marriage, she was taught to suppress jealousy, to be cheerful even when neglected, and to derive validation from the smallest gestures of attention. The world watched her smile through the cracks of a relationship that was emotionally uneven, while the cameras captured moments of heartbreak that were never fully addressed. Behind those carefully edited episodes lay the invisible labor of a woman who constantly tried to prove her worth in a structure that fundamentally refused to see her individuality. When Kody finally walked away, it wasn't a loud confrontation. It was quiet, deliberate, and deeply intelligent. She didn't storm out to make headlines, she left to make peace. Her decision to refer to the sister wives, set as just work, is psychologically fascinating because it represents the compartmentalization of trauma. She took something that once defined her identity, her marriage, her show, her public image, and placed it neatly into a box labeled professional duty. This act of separation between life and performance is a powerful coping mechanism, one that allows her to move forward without being consumed by the past. Every time she films a new episode, she treats it as a job, not a personal battle, signaling that she has mastered emotional detachment, a skill many never achieve after years of shared suffering. But what makes this story even more profound is the presence of David Woolley, Kody's new husband and her true emotional partner. David is not just the man who entered her life after the storm, he is the safe harbor she had been seeking all along. Their connection is rooted in genuine companionship, not obligation. When Kody speaks about David, her tone changes. She laughs more freely, she describes shared moments of joy rather than duty. Their relationship thrives on simplicity, cooking together, hiking, playing with grandchildren, or even joking over mundane household chores. These small glimpses into her daily life reveal the emotional nourishment she had long been denied. And perhaps that is what makes her transformation so relatable. It's not about dramatic gestures of revenge or public confrontation. It's about finding peace in ordinary happiness after decades of extraordinary tension. The contrast between her past and present relationships is stark. Kody Brown's world was one of hierarchies, rules, and spiritual justifications for emotional imbalance. Kody's world with David, on the other hand, is one of equality and laughter. David's daughter, Kody, has publicly praised Kody's warmth and her ability to blend into the family without effort. Together, they have created an environment that values communication over control and affection over authority. Kody's new life in Utah reflects this shift. She often describes her home as a sanctuary, a word loaded with meaning for someone who once lived in a house full of conflict and unspoken pain. The physical distance from Kody's sphere of influence has allowed her to rebuild her emotional architecture from the ground up. When she said that she never talks about Kody at home, it wasn't bitterness speaking, it was closure. She no longer needs to reference him to validate her freedom. She no longer needs to explain her choices or defend her happiness. Her silence is not avoidance, it is peace. And this is where the story takes on a universal dimension. In Kody's quiet revolution, we see the broader struggle of countless people, especially women, who have spent years compromising themselves in the name of family, religion, or societal expectation. Christine's evolution is a lesson in self-liberation, not through defiance but through self-awareness. She teaches us that sometimes the most powerful rebellion is to stop engaging with what once consumed you. Yet her calm detachment does not mean she feels no empathy for those she left behind. In multiple interviews, Christine has expressed concern that Kody remains distant from some of his children. Her wish for him to be a better father, despite their fractured past, underscores her emotional maturity. She doesn't seek revenge, she seeks growth for herself and even for him. This perspective reveals how far she has come emotionally. Instead of replaying the old conflicts, she focuses on nurturing new connections and promoting healthier family dynamics for her children and grandchildren. Psychologists might call this phase post-traumatic growth, where individuals not only recover from emotional distress, but also discover a deeper sense of purpose and identity. Christine exemplifies this concept perfectly. Her life now is not just about being free from Kody, it's about redefining what freedom means. It's the ability to live authentically, to find love without fear, and to enjoy life's smallest moments without guilt. This is what true healing looks like. But Christine's personal triumph also exposes a fundamental truth about the entertainment industry. For years, the Sister Wives franchise thrived on conflict. The tension between the wives, the emotional imbalance, and the drama surrounding Kody's favoritism. Now that the women, particularly Christine, have moved on and found peace, the show struggles to maintain its former intensity. Viewers are slowly realizing that what once seemed like a family experiment in plural harmony was, in reality, an ongoing case study in emotional exhaustion. The decline in ratings reflects this awakening. Without Christine's vulnerability and presence, the show has lost its emotional anchor. Her departure didn't just end a relationship. It redefined the narrative. Experts on family dynamics point out that Christine's decision mirrors a wider cultural shift among women leaving controlling relationships. Across different societies, there's a growing awareness that emotional neglect can be as damaging as overt abuse. Christine's story resonates because it encapsulates that truth. Her leaving was not about anger, it was about reclaiming self-worth. And that's what makes her journey educational for audiences. It teaches viewers to recognize emotional manipulation, to understand that love should never feel like a performance, and to see that healing doesn't always happen in public. It often starts in silence, with one small, brave decision. Her fans have embraced this transformation wholeheartedly. Social media comments under her recent live videos are filled with admiration and gratitude. Many women write that Christine inspired them to reevaluate their own relationships, to speak up, or to walk away from situations where they felt unseen. The ripple effect of her actions extends far beyond reality TV, it touches real lives. Christine's calm demeanor and genuine happiness have become a form of advocacy for emotional health, especially among women raised in restrictive environments. Her journey also challenges the deeply rooted assumption that loyalty must come at the cost of happiness. For years, Christine believed that enduring pain was proof of faith. Now she understands that true faith lies in trusting oneself enough to leave what no longer feels right. It's a profound philosophical shift, from submission to self-trust, and it's one that audiences can feel in her every word and gesture. Perhaps the most poignant part of Christine's story is her newfound stillness. She no longer needs the chaos of televised drama to feel alive. She has found vitality in the mundane, beauty in the quiet, and fulfillment in the present moment. It's this stillness that reveals the depth of her transformation. Her life no longer revolves around proving her value to others, it revolves around sharing joy with those who already see her value. David Woolley and Kody Brown now live in what many fans have come to call their Utah sanctuary, a place not only built of stone and wood, but of healing and renewal. Their story begins not in the quiet serenity of the mountains where they now reside, but in the lingering echoes of a life once filled with noise, pressure, and the invisible weight of spiritual expectations. When Christine decided to leave her long and public polygamous marriage, few imagined she would rebuild her world with such grace, or that a man like David Woolley would be the one to help her rediscover the peace she had been searching for all her life. Yet what has unfolded in Utah is more than a love story. It is a lesson in emotional resilience, partnership, and the human capacity to find calm after years of internal chaos. Christine's journey to this point was neither sudden nor simple. For years, she appeared on television as one of several wives, smiling through conversations that hinted at deep sadness, carrying a burden that millions could sense but few could fully understand. She was part of a family that preached unity while quietly fracturing behind the scenes. Her relationship with Kody Brown had been the emotional centerpiece of her adult life, and when that bond finally broke, Christine found herself facing not only the end of a marriage, but the collapse of an identity she had lived for decades. Leaving that environment was more than a physical move, it was a spiritual extraction. She wasn't just walking away from a husband, she was leaving behind a belief system that told her endurance was a virtue, even when it meant suffering in silence. In that fragile space between endings and beginnings, Christine met David Woolley. Unlike the complex emotional web she came from, David's presence was simple, grounding, and deeply real. He did not approach her as a public figure or a former reality star. He approached her as a woman who had endured pain and deserved peace. The first thing people noticed about David was his calm demeanor. He was not loud, not overbearing, not seeking to replace the past with his own dominance. Instead, he offered stillness, the very thing Christine's life had lacked for years. Slowly, through quiet gestures and mutual understanding, he helped her rebuild her soul. Their Utah home became the symbol of that transformation. Nestled in the beauty of the mountains, far from the cameras and controversy that once defined her days, the house reflects Christine's rebirth. Viewers who follow her updates notice how often she talks about home, about the joy of cooking for her children and grandchildren, about the laughter that fills their living room without tension. The home itself feels alive with authenticity, a far cry from the carefully curated environment of her former life. Experts in relationship healing often point out that physical spaces can mirror emotional states, and in Christine's case, that couldn't be truer. The Utah sanctuary is not just where she lives, it's where she learned to breathe again. Christine's transformation under David's gentle influence has also been deeply psychological. For someone who lived for years in a system that prioritized male authority, being with a man who sees her as an equal has been liberating. David's respect for Christine is evident not just in his words, but in the way he stands beside her rather than in front of her. He encourages her independence, supports her projects, and celebrates her individuality. In interviews and social media posts, he often praises her strength, calling her his best friend, his partner, and the light of his life. Those phrases might sound simple, but for Christine, they represent a love rooted in balance, not control. Christine's audience has watched her transformation with a mix of admiration and awe. Fans often comment that she looks younger, happier, and more confident than ever before. It's as though the emotional tension that once defined her face has melted into calmness. But what makes this phase of her life even more powerful is her openness about the healing process. She doesn't pretend that leaving her past behind was easy, nor does she claim that new love automatically erased old scars. Instead, she acknowledges the complexity of recovery. In one candid interview, she admitted that learning to trust again took time, and that sometimes the shadows of old wounds still linger. Yet she also spoke about David's patience, the way he listens, the way he lets silence do the work of comfort. That quiet understanding, she says, is what allowed her to find her voice again. Beyond the emotional layer, Christine's story also carries deep social significance. In many ways, she represents a broader cultural movement, a generation of women stepping out of restrictive systems and choosing self-determination. Christine's exit from polygamy and her redefinition of love and faith challenge long-standing narratives about female submission and endurance. She did not reject her beliefs, she reinterpreted them. Her spiritual growth now centers on peace and gratitude rather than obligation and guilt. When she speaks about her faith, it's no longer through the lens of fear or hierarchy, but through appreciation for the freedom to live truthfully. David's role in this transformation is subtle but profound. Unlike many partners who tried to rewrite the past, he helped Christine accept it as part of her story. Instead of telling her to forget, he helped her remember differently, with compassion instead of pain. Psychologists often describe this process as cognitive reframing, where past experiences are reinterpreted to reduce their emotional sting. Christine has, in her own way, mastered this skill. She no longer speaks about her former life with resentment but with reflection. That is the hallmark of true healing. As their love story unfolded, the public response evolved too. Initially, some viewers wondered if Christine's quick transition into a new relationship meant she was rushing. But over time, the depth and steadiness of her connection with David silenced those doubts. People began to see that what they shared was not about escaping the past, but embracing the present. David's gentle humor, his closeness with Christine's children, and his visible devotion all contributed to a narrative of renewal rather than replacement. Their wedding, held quietly and surrounded by family, symbolized that new beginning. It wasn't a spectacle. It was a declaration of peace. Inside their Utah sanctuary, Christine and David have created a rhythm of life that many find inspiring. They spend weekends exploring nature, cooking together, hosting family dinners, and even sharing snippets of their joy online. But what stands out most is how Christine describes her days. She calls them calm. For someone who lived years in emotional turbulence, calmness is not boring, it's a luxury. And in that calm, Christine has found her truest self. Experts in trauma recovery often highlight that the aftermath of leaving a high-control environment involves rebuilding trust, not just in others but in oneself. Christine's ability to make independent decisions, to speak without fear of criticism, and to express her feelings openly are all signs of this renewal. David's steady support reinforces that healing, creating a safe emotional foundation where she can thrive. It's a dynamic rooted not in dependency, but in mutual growth. Public reaction to this new chapter has been overwhelmingly positive. On social media, thousands of fans express how Christine's transformation gives them courage to pursue their own peace. Many write that watching her find happiness has helped them walk away from situations that no longer serve their well-being. Christine has unintentionally become a mentor figure, teaching others that joy can exist after heartbreak, and that starting over is not failure, it's freedom. But perhaps the most powerful element of this story lies in its quietness. In a world obsessed with drama, Christine and David's life radiates an almost poetic simplicity. There are no loud declarations, no public feuds, no attempts to outshine anyone. Instead, there's a focus on gratitude, on appreciating every sunrise in the Utah hills, every shared laugh, every evening spent without tension. The absence of chaos has become their greatest treasure, and in that peace, Christine has found her true sanctuary, not just in a house or a relationship, but within herself. Christine's journey also provides an educational lesson about emotional sustainability. When people experience long-term stress or imbalance in relationships, the body and mind adapt to survive, often at the cost of genuine happiness. Christine's story shows that once safety and love replace stress and control, the human spirit naturally begins to restore itself. She glows not because life is suddenly perfect, but because she is living in alignment with her truth. That authenticity resonates deeply with viewers who are tired of facades and crave real emotional honesty. As the seasons change in Utah, Christine's story continues to evolve. She and David often talk about building a legacy together, one centered on love, family, and peace. They plan to travel, to explore new places, and to continue sharing glimpses of their simple but fulfilling life. For Christine, every step now feels like a continuation of the freedom she once only dreamed of. Her laughter, once cautious, now rings without restraint. Her eyes, once weary, now reflect serenity. In reflecting on their journey, one can see that David did not rescue Christine. He reminded her that she never needed rescuing. He offered partnership, not possession, and through that he gave her back to herself. That is what makes their love so deeply human. It is built not on dependence, but on mutual respect and understanding. Christine's Utah sanctuary is not just a setting for a new chapter. It is the physical embodiment of everything she has learned about love, faith, and personal strength. As we close today's story, we are reminded that peace is not found in escaping the world, but in creating one's own sanctuary within it. Christine Brown's quiet life with David Woolley stands as proof that healing does not require noise or attention. It requires patience, compassion, and the courage to choose stillness over chaos. And somewhere in the calm heart of Utah, a woman who once felt unseen now lives freely, surrounded by love, laughter, and the kind of silence that finally feels like home.